Oh, perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first meeting of the year. There are about $10 million millionaires in the entire world. 6 billion people, 10 million are millionaires. That's like about 0.0001%. In the US, there are about $3 million millionaires in this country. That's less than 1% of the country. I have a secret for all of you. Each and every single one person in this room has what it takes to be a dollar millionaire. You just have to be disciplined and follow these steps. The first thing you should do is manage your finances. Don't just let it walk over you. You need to manage your finances. Starting with setting your own financial goals. Now these can vary for everyone depending on, for example, if you have kids, I'm sure you want your kids to go to college, you need to figure out how much money you're willing to set aside for them. If you don't mind them going to UCLA or Berkeley, for example, $40,000 per kid, that should be enough. If you want them to go out of state or somewhere fancy, you need to set aside about $160,000 per kid. You also need to take into account your own retirement costs. If you don't mind having a very low frills retirement where you're not traveling anywhere, you can set aside less money. But if you want to really enjoy retirement years, you need to set aside a lot more money as well. Also, your health account. You need to make sure that you have more than enough money to take care of your health in your retirement age. And once you figure out what you want to achieve in your retirement and how much money you want to have saved up, the next step is to figure out how you're actually going to get there. And there are a lot of online calculators that you can find where you put in the amount of money that you save every month, your rate of return, and also inflation. And it calculates for you how much money you actually need to get to where you want to be. For example, I have a link here, which I highly recommend that you go and check out later. Another important part of managing your finances is to have separate accounts for your savings and also for your spending. One of the biggest traps that people fall into is that they know how much money they need to save, but because they have a common bank account, they start spending the money that they should be saving without even realizing it. So I highly recommend that you create a separate savings account and you direct deposit the money into the savings account every paycheck. For example, myself, my savings account is my E-Trade account. Every single pay stub, I make sure that how much money I want to have saved goes into my E-Trade account automatically. That way I know that I never need to take money out of there, and if I do, I'm doing something wrong. I would also recommend having a separate flexible spending account. Now we all have expenses that we know we need to go through every month, like your mortgage payments, your rent, your car insurance, your car payments. Well, you also have a lot of expenses that are flexible every month. These can be how much money you spend on food, travel, and miscellaneous expenses. You need to go through your pay stub, figure out how much money you have set aside for your savings, how much money you have set aside for the known spendings like rent, figure out how much money you can spend on your flex savings, and create a separate account for this, which will cover all these things. So that way, when you're planning your next travel trip, you can look at your flexible spending account and see exactly how much money you have in your budget and how much money you're willing to spend. You also need to go make sure you strike a balance between these two. You don't want to be spending all your money on savings because then you're not going to be very happy with your life. You're not going to have a very interesting life. But you don't want to be spending too much money here either. You need to set your own balance between the two. For example, what I personally do is that every time I get a bonus or a pay raise, I put half of it into my savings and the other half into my flexible spending. For you, the ratio might vary, but you should be making a conscious decision about this. Don't allow your expenses to just happen to you. Manage how you're going to be spending your expenses. The next thing you need to do to be a dollar millionaire is to minimize how much money you're spending in taxes. I know we have liberals in this room and also conservatives, but let's be honest here. No one here enjoys paying taxes. And properly managing your taxes can reduce your tax bill by up to $10,000. The most important thing is your 401k. The government lets you put aside $16,500 every year in your 401k. This is money that you will not be taxed on. You will be taxed on it eventually at retirement, but at that point, if you don't spend it, you won't be taxed on it. If you spend it on certain things, you won't be taxed on it. So I highly recommend that you max out your 401k every year to minimize your tax bill. There are also a lot of things about the 401k that people don't realize. For one thing, buying a house and mortgage payments, for example, are actually, you can take it out of your 401k without any penalty. It's not just for retirement. You can use it for things such as buying a house. You can use it for college payments, for example. You can use it for medical expenses. So when you're putting money into your 401k account, it's not just something for retirement. You can also use it for these things, which is why I highly recommend that you max it out. In addition to that, you're also allowed to have a Roth IRA account for up to $5,000 a year. Now, this is because it's a Roth account, you will be paying taxes on it right now. But the good thing about it is that it actually grows tax-free until you retire. So when you do retire and you take the money out of the Roth IRA account, you're not going to be paying any taxes at all on the capital gains that you've been making on your stock investment. Another thing that a lot of people don't do is holding stocks for too short a period of time. When you hold stocks for, let's say you buy a stock today, 6 months later you decide you don't like the company anymore, you sell the stock and you buy something else, you're paying a capital gains tax of 35%. Meaning if you make a profit of $100, $35 out of that is going to go to the government in tax. In contrast, if you hold your stocks for at least 1 year, this value drops drastically, drops from 35% to 15%. So I highly recommend that anytime you buy any securities, hold on to it for at least a year. Especially for your SPP. I know a lot of people do quick sale with their SPP. That's a very bad idea. Hold on to it for at least a year or a year and a half. After that, when you sell that, you'll be paying much less money in tax. There are also a lot of other things you can do to minimize your tax, which I'm not too familiar with, but I would highly recommend that you look into it. Your HSA account, for example, health spending account. If you know that you'll be spending a certain amount of money in the next year on your medical expenses, create a HSA account and put that money into the HSA account. That way you wouldn't be paying taxes on that. Similarly for college expenses, 529 plans. If you know that your kids are going to be spending this much money on college expenses, create a 529 plan for them in advance. Or even if your kids are not even in college yet, you can use the 529 plan to save up for their college funds. And this money is also tax deductible. Mortgage interest payments, for example, are also tax deductible. So these are all things that if you add them up together, you can reduce your tax bill per year by $10,000. That's a lot of money. If you highly make use of all these things, you can really increase your savings drastically. You also need to maximize your ROI. You want to make as much return on your investment as you can. For one thing, you need to pay off your high interest loans immediately. These are no-brainers. We should all know these things. If you have a credit card where you're getting 15% interest rate, just by paying it off early, you're effectively getting a 15% ROI. That's a kind of return on investment that you don't get anywhere else. Bank loans, for example, with a high interest rate, you also want to pay this off. Another thing that is not too intuitive, however, is that you don't want to pay off loans with a low interest rate. If you have, for example, a college loan with a 4% rate of interest rate, if you pay it off early, you're effectively getting a 4% ROI. That's actually really low. If you invest in bonds, for example, you can get a 6% ROI. So don't pay off these low interest rate loans too early. You want to hold on to those and invest the money instead. Same thing goes for special financing offers. If you get a credit card where they give you no APR for 1 year, make use of it. Max it out, leave it there for 1 year, and then pay it off. And in the meantime, use the money to save instead. Invest it somewhere else. Invest your savings. Do not leave it sitting in your bank account. Your checking account gives you 0% interest. Your savings account, for example, gives you something like 2% interest a year. It is really pathetic. My parents, for example, for decades, they kept all their savings in a bank account, and it's really bad. If they had invested that money, it will grow incredibly fast. When you're talking about investments, I'll be delivering a whole speech on this at some other date, but you need to pick an appropriate risk profile. I really wish you could see this graph better, but this is blocking it. But what this graph actually shows is that the way you invest between stocks and bonds, these are all points of different bonds as opposed to stocks. And depending on what you pick, thank you. Depending on how you pick it, your risk profile changes, but your expected returns also change. You need to pick an appropriate point on this graph for what you want to do. And this will depend on your age, your financial security. The younger you are, the more risk you can afford to take. The more financially secure you are, the more risk you can afford to take. I also have a link here. I'll be mailing this out eventually. You guys, I highly recommend that you go to the link and check it out. Build up your credit score. All right. I think I'm going to go over time, but I'll finish this up as soon as I can. Build up your credit score, because the better credit score you have, the lower the interest rate you're going to be getting on your mortgage payments, and also for any loans you take, such as car loans and also college loans for your kids. How do you build up your credit score? The most important things, there are actually a lot of things that go into this, but let me go to the most important one. You want to have multiple lines of credit. I recommend having at least 3 to 4. For example, credit card, car loans, student loans, mortgages, and so on. Have at least 3 to 4 of these things around. You also want to have a large line of credit. This is something that banks look for. If you have a credit card with a $20,000 line of credit, even if you don't use it all up, it makes you look more responsible because they know that you can handle having that much money available to you. Another important thing that is actually not very intuitive is that you should only use 20 to 30% of the credit that's being extended to you. For example, if you have a $10,000 credit card, don't use more than $3,000 per month. A lot of people, they get a $10,000 credit card, they use $5,000 every month, they pay it off, no problem, right? But it's actually bad for your credit score. You want to always ask for a credit limit increase so that you only end up using 20 to 30% of your credit. Now, why does all this matter? It seems like a huge hassle, right? But believe me, it actually does add up. Let's say you save $1,500 every month for 25 years, and you leave this money in a savings account getting you 1.5%. At the end of 25 years, you're going to have $340,000 after inflation. That's a decent pile of money, but it's not a whole lot. It's not going to let you accomplish all your goals. Well, let's say you make a few changes. You minimize your taxes every year. You maximize your ROI. You do all those things that I talked to you about. You manage to scrounge up $2,000 every month. You invest in a way that you get 8% returns every year. After 25 years, the amount of money you put in is $380,000, but how much money do you actually end up with? $1 million after inflation. Look at this graph. It starts off slow, but eventually everything just snowballs, and the amount of money that you have just goes shooting up. This stuff really matters, folks, and for a New Year resolution, I highly encourage all of you to get on the road to financial success. Thank you.